Hello and welcome to another YouTube video. Focus, my friend, focus. Hello my friends, welcome back to another YouTube video. In today's video, I'm gonna show you the best force feedback settings on the whole internet for Assetto Corsa. So let's get started. What I have here is in custom shaders patch force feedback tweaks. I have installed this new version of alternative force feedback. You may know from my other video that I did a video on alternative force feedback version 1.0, and I just gave you the best settings in the whole world for the Logitech or weak steering wheels. Make sure you go check it out. It's going to be in the description as well. So if you have a Logitech steering wheel, check that out. But this is an upgraded version. It works very nicely. Not very nice. It works the best on direct drive wheels. I have right here a CSL, FANATEC CSL DD, 8 Newton meters wheelbase, and it works beautifully. Okay. So since I made that video, I discovered there are a lot of versions of this script, and I've tested almost all of them, and now I understand very well how they work and what they do, and I'm going to show you the best version. So that version will be right here, version 1.4.2. Now, as you can see, I have one called GT3, I have one called Formula, one have Drift, I have a version 1.5, I have a version 1.0, and this is soft lock test. So alternative force feedback version 1.0 and soft lock test, they are already in your content manager if you have a up-to-date version. But these ones we need to install. So before we get into the settings and how to set all this up, let me get you where you get this script. Okay. So again, in the description there is another link that will get you right here. Okay, so right here we have all these files, okay, for the alternative force feedback extended, and it's from version 1.0 up to version 1.9. So I tested 1.9, I tested 1.8, 1.5, 1.4, 1.3, 1.2. I tested a lot of this, and they work in two separate ways. So up to version 1.4.2, it works very differently than from 1.5 onwards. And I recommend version 1.4.2. Why do I recommend this? Well, first, you just have to trust Mr. NeghevPower over here because I'm the best around. Nothing's gonna happen. Like I'm saying, the best. I know this stuff. It's basically 5 months of documenting and testing before doing this video. So be patient. You're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna get the best force feedback. But somebody in the comments once said he has ADHD and I need to get straight to the point because he cannot focus. Well, that's your problem, my friend. Please focus. It's gonna be like a 20-30 minutes video. I need to explain all this and how to get it. So let's get into it, okay? Stop interrupting me, my friend. Up to version 1.4.2, when you steer into a corner and the car loses the rear end or it starts to oversteer, right? Force feedback gets heavier and it wants to counter steer. And that's very nice for me. I like it that way because, you know, you have a somewhat heavy steering wheel, right? Depending on the corner. And then the rear steps out and immediately the wheel counter steers by itself. So you just let it do its thing and you catch the slide very easily. From version 1.5 onwards, it works very differently. So the guy that made this said, so I read all the descriptions, you know, from what I've read on the internet. I haven't personally talked to this guy. I left him a message, but he didn't respond yet. From version 1.5, when you get oversteer, right, when the rear end slips out, the steering wheel gets lighter, so it doesn't counter steers so fast and aggressively. It actually gets lighter, and That's because he wanted to make a bigger difference from having grip to not having grip. But the problem is when you get the rear end loose, you kind of have to guess how much counter steer you put in to save the slide. But the wheel doesn't give you as an accurate information as it should. Thank you, thank you. So, version 1.4.2. You can get the other versions just to test, try it out, have some fun. I'm gonna show you now how to get multiple versions, because if you just install an updated version, it's going to overwrite itself and you're just going to have one version in Content Manager. So you download version 1.4.2, right? This is what we download. You click download. Let me minimize all this stuff. And as you can see, I have multiples right here because I tested a lot of these. So you have AC Alternative Force Feedback Extended version 1.4.2. It's a zip file, you extract it and you get this folder. Right, in this folder, you're gonna have the extension and instructions. Read the instructions. For this one, the guy says he has a V&M Elite 18 Newton meter wheelbase with the following settings: max wheelbase torque and gain, zero damper, friction, inertia, spring gain, and 50% force feedback gain in game. So I tried to follow these instructions, but I also went inside the game. I used the pedal app that shows the force feedback, and it will be a good idea to not have a signal that's clipping a lot. So using the normal force feedback in game and choosing a gain value that doesn't clip the wheel a lot would be a good starting point. I'm going to show you the settings for this wheel, but you have a different wheel, you may want to adjust the settings a little bit. Also, it has installation instruction on all that. Now we want to open the Assetto Corsa game files. So in my case, it's we have in Steam Apps, Common, Assetto Corsa. You go where you install the game and you open the main folder of the game. Now, for the force feedback extended script, we go to extension, we go to Lua, force feedback post processes, and we have this folder. Now here in Assetto Corsa, we go extension, we go Lua, force feedback post processes, and we have this folder. Now you will have the soft lock test here and the alternative folder here, because those are already in Content Manager. Now, as you can see, I have installed different version of this. I have the 1.5 just for testing purposes, because that's the first version where it changes how the force feedback works. So I'm just trying to see if I can make that if I can find some settings that I like, but you know, because it works differently, I don't really like it. So how do you get multiple folders like this? Well, you get this folder, alternative force feedback extended, you copy it, you paste it here, right? And let's say you rename it, let's say YouTube, right? You double click on the folder, right click on manifest, edit with notepad, right? And right here under name it says alternative force feedback extended. So you delete extended and you say YouTube or whatever, GT3, whatever car this is for, right? You click save and that's it. Now, if you want to have one for GT3 like I have, one for Formula type of cars, one for drift cars, you just copy this again, you click paste, and then you redo the process. You rename it here, and then you rename it as well over here. It's going to have the name YouTube because we copied the YouTube one. Okay, so it doesn't overwrite itself, right? We are going to delete this one, right? And now if we open Content Manager, as you can see, I have the alternative, right? The stock one. I have extended 1.5 that I'm testing. I have the drift, the formula, the GT3 that I already have for myself, and now we have this YouTube one that we just created, and then the soft lock text, the test. Now, in settings, update, about updates in custom shader patch, I have the version 0.2.11. You need 0.2.8 or newer version for this to work. In Assetto Corsa, we have controls, force feedback, and we set the gain to 50%. Now, if you have a much stronger wheel, you can maybe lower this value, or you can leave it the same. I would suggest to put this on 100% if only if you have a Logitech wheel or something among those lines. But if you have a Logitech wheels, you're just better off watching the video that I put in the description, because it's dedicated to those steering wheels. And you can also get this version 1.4.2 of this feedback, and you just apply what I showed you in that video. You applied it to this script, okay? So we go back to custom shaders patch, we go to force feedback tweaks, and now we have we can select the script we made. Now I'm gonna keep on the GT3 one. First, in my FANATEC app, I have sensitivity auto. Assetto Corsa automatically adjust the soft lock. Force feedback strength 100. We go on peak. Now, for my liking, I had to add a lot of damper. This is personal preference. In my case, I have 25% damping, natural friction on 5, and inertia 0, interpolation filter. This just filters the signal a little bit and makes it not so grainy, but it works fine on 0. Don't go more than 1, 0 or 1, whatever you prefer. And then all these other ones are 100%. You have to let them on 100% because spring effect and damper effect, this script uses this channel to get force feedback going into the wheel, so you need to let them on 100%. That's my FANATEC app settings. Now we go here on custom manager, content manager, sorry, where the magic happens. Now we have to additional post-processing script. We have to check this. You have to check this, and then this will become active. When this is active, the script only uses the gain inside the force feedback settings on Assetto Corsa. So right here, this script only uses the gain. None of this will work anymore. It will bypass them, okay? Also in custom shader patch, if you want to go back to your normal settings, you just uncheck this. It goes back to your normal settings. It's not going to modify them or anything, so you're not going to lose them. You're only going to have this gain modified if you have it on something else right now. How this works: you have side force, you have front force, you have suspension travel force, damping, base force multiplier. So this is the alternative force feedback main settings of how the force feedback feel. And then we have alternative force feedback haptic effects. Side force is basically the force applied to the car as a side force. So this is what makes the wheel counter steer. So this will be your main focus for catching slides, drifting, and all that. This will be your main focus. It's gonna in order to tune it for your liking, if you don't want to use my settings or you want to adjust, you can turn everything off and just leave side force on and see what that does. But basically, it's the force you get in the wheel when taking a corner, when the car oversteers and all that. Front force is like a longitudinal force. So let's say you are on the brakes and you want to go into a corner. While on the brakes and you're trying to steer into the corner, the force feedback will get heavier because the front tires are loaded, all right, under braking. As soon as you start to release the brake, you can feel the force feedback getting lighter, and it allows you to steer into the corner. So front force has, I really like this effect. I turn it to 80%. because it gives you so much information of how much of the brakes you are applying and how much it allows the car to steer into the corner. So this is a very, very uh, nice and important force feedback force to get to your wheel. So that's the beauty of this script. You can adjust each force however you like it. Now we have suspension travel force. For the suspension, I have it set on 45%. Basically, all the suspension moving in the game, you get that in the steering wheel. Now, if you get too high, it's just gonna rumble a lot, or if you use 45% in a Formula 1 car that has very stiff suspension and very low travel suspension, it doesn't travel a lot, you may want to use like something like 15%, like the default settings, or maybe lower 10% or something like that. In a road car with um, soft and long travel suspension, you can use higher. So basically, if you go into a corner and it's a little bit of compression, you can feel that small compression or that small bump, you can feel it in the steering wheel. If the road texture is very rough, all right, you can feel a little bit of the texture, because you can feel all those movements of the wheel of the wheel of the car in the steering wheel. So suspension adds a lot of immersion, lets you know what's happening on the track, how smooth it is, how bumpy it is, all that. It's an amazing setting. I have it set to 45% in my case. Damping, I don't use any damping in this script. It's very grainy. It feels weird. I just like to use damping in my FANATEC software. Now, base force multiplier. So this is very interesting. You can set this, if you have a Logitech wheel, you might want to set this to 2. So it multiplies these side forces, front forces, suspension travel force, it multiplies those against the gain you have set in game. So you have in game, I suggest you set a gain for the base force feedback, something that it's not clipping a lot, like I said, and then you can multiply these forces on that effect. So let's say you have a Moza R3 wheel, 50% force feedback in game may be too low for you, so you can leave that as 50%, because Assetto Corsa has so the dynamic range of the force feedback signal is very high in Assetto Corsa, and it tends to clip a lot on 100%. So you want to apply these force feedback script settings. You want to apply them to a clean signal, if that makes sense. So select a signal that's not clipping inside the game, and then on that you can adjust these forces. So if you have an R3 or an R5, you may want to set this multiplier to 2, and maybe 55% and 80%. Now it's a bit too much, and you can lower these effects a little bit. Okay, now you cannot just go 100%. If you can, it's gonna overload a channel, and you set this to 100%, and even if you just turn the steering wheel a little bit, it's gonna feel like a constant rubber torque. You're not gonna have any details. So it doesn't work like, oh, I really like this effect, let's turn it all the way up to the maximum. It doesn't work like that. You kind of have to go by feel to get the most out of it as you can, and stop right before this signal clips, and it's just gonna feel like a constant force. So after all my testing with 50% gain for an 8 Newton meter wheelbase, you can set this base multiplier to 1, side force 55, front force 80%, suspension travel force 45%, and it's gonna work beautifully. And if you're driving different GT3 or GT4 cars, you can set per car force feedback in game in Assetto Corsa. So it's gonna say 100%. That means it uses 100% of that 50 base gain that you set, and you can lower a little bit or go higher, like 110, 120%. I don't recommend higher than that. And for some cars, maybe this is gonna be too much force feedback or it's clipping a little bit, so you go down to 90 or 80% and it's going to save it just for that car. I'm sure you know how to use this. If you're modifying how the force feedback works in a game, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about in clicking that wheel icon on the side panel in Assetto Corsa and modifying the force feedback, right? Okay, now let's get into, before we go into the haptics, let's say you want to set a drifting, don't copy these settings for drifting and formula. I'm still testing and I'm going to do a specific video just for best drift settings. Now this script, when the car is stationary, there's a constant force to the wheel, like in a real life car, when the car is stationary and you try to steer the wheel, it resists the movement, right? And I think this script has that built in. I haven't figured out a way to turn it off. So until you have like 5 kilometers per hour, it has a lot of damping. So for drifting, let's say you're doing a donut, that's not good. But other than that, it works beautifully because you can turn the suspension down, you can turn the front force down, maybe you don't want to use any haptics, and you can just focus on the side force and the damping in your software to get the best counter steer speed that you like and catching drifts. And this script works very nicely for drifting, but I just need to finish the settings, all right? Maybe for formula, for example, like I said, you want to use lower suspension force, lower front force, and even lower side force. Now, see, I'm testing here with base multiplier on 2. So this is just for testing. For GT3 and GT4, this is my final settings. You can just copy them and have fun. They work amazing. But it's also personal preference, so you might want to tweak this. If you're inside the game and you alt-tabbing to content manager and you want to modify side force and you want to bring it down to 40%, in order for this to apply in-game, so you don't have to close the game, you're just going to select a different script and then you go back to your script that you're working on and it's going to apply it in game. You don't have to close the game, but just modifying it here, it will not auto apply it, so you have to change the script and go back and it applies it. That's how you adjust while in game. Now for haptic effects, I like the gear shift, so this is very nice. You set the gear shift to 100%. The higher the gain you have in game, the higher the intensity of this force feedback haptic effects are. So for 50%, like I have, you can use it on 100%. So when you shift the gears, it's gonna give a little notch in the steering wheel, and that feels very nice. Gear shift duration 90 milliseconds. How long is the duration of the effect? I have ABS on 100% and I'm using ABS frequency 20 Hertz. So you can choose the frequency of how the steering wheel moves when you activate this, the ABS effect. I don't use an effect for wheel spin. I don't use understeer, lateral slip or oversteer. But I use wheel lock. Cars that don't have an ABS, when you lock the wheels, you can also have a frequency vibration in the steering wheel letting you know you are locking up the brakes. I also use curb effects on 100%. In game, there are some curbs that are just visuals. They don't have, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, just super flat, and you have no feedback from them on the suspension side, and having this curb effect makes all the curbs have that rumble when you go over them. Dirty tires right here. If you go off track and you come back on track, it's gonna have a kind of a grainy effect. It's gonna have an effect on the wheel until the wheels clean off. Again, I don't use it. Do as you like. These other effects, you can copy them right here if you like. I'm pretty sure this script right here is gonna bypass these effects. It says, yes, if active, all other force feedback settings except for gain will be ignored. It even says it right here. in case you prefer denser force feedback, especially if your steering wheel uses gears like most Logitech wheels, increase base force multiplier, right? Like we said right here, base force multiplier. Additional post-processing, range compression. Leave this on 100. When you are not using the script, you don't want to compress the range, or if the wheel clips a lot, but you still want to use high gain and high force feedback, you can go 120 or 130. So that what that does, it compresses the dynamic range a little bit, and it brings the slower, the more soft effects, right, up, and the high peaks brings them down. So you're sacrificing dynamic range, but you're not going to get clipping, and you can get away with higher force feedback that doesn't clip. Okay, but smaller force will be higher, and higher force will be lower. So they will be more similar. It will not be just, you know, having a light wheel because there's no force supply to them, and you go into a bump and it's a very high effect. So that's what range compression does, but it doesn't work when you have this active. And more physically accurate gyro implementation, use that as well when you are not using the script. After you do these settings, you can just Alt-Tab, deactivate them, and see how they compare to the normal force feedback in the game. But I like this because I can set it up exactly how I like it. And I can have a setting for drifting and for Formula cars and for GT3 cars or for road cars. And I can have a setting for the car that I am racing if you want to do that. So this is very nice. And this update compared to, so this, I showed you this in my other video for Logitech wheel. So it's basically this, but it's upgraded to have this haptic effects as well, right? No, not the YouTube one, sorry, this. Yeah, this is how it comes stock. These are the stock settings, and this is whatever is with red is that I change it. So now it has the haptic effects as well. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. Talk to me in the comments. How long is this video? 30 minutes, like I said. Perfect. Let me know what you think. If you have any problems, if you have different steering wheels, if, you know, my other videos got like 37K views so far and about almost 300 comments. And there were a lot of people that said that they absolutely love it, and it changed the experience for them, and they can drift easier now, and they can catch slides, and it improved the lap times a lot, and everybody's saying all this stuff. It made me search the whole internet so I can find even better, more up-to-date versions of this script and give you the best force feedback settings possible. So if you like them, subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. Like the video, it's gonna help it, and leave me a comment. Say if you like it, if you don't like it, if you have some problems. Maybe if you have a problem and we solve it in the comments, other people can see it, and it helps me make another video. You know, when I see a comment, doesn't matter what I'm not gonna get offended. No pussy here. So you can talk however you like. You know, I'm not. This is not me asking for a compliment. This is me just talk to me, my friend. Okay, let me know what's happening. All right. So that makes me do other videos and show you guys different settings and, you know, all the secrets I find. It's a pleasure to share them with you. So I'm very curious to see how this works for you, the settings you did, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye. Take care. Do some push-ups. By the way, right? You want to be jacked. This is nerd stuff, but it's also very nice to be jacked while you are a nerd. All right? It's very important. So do some push-ups once in a while. Drink some water. Get some sunshine. Right? And yeah, use these settings and drive like a maniac. Okay? The NeghevPower will be with you, my friend. See you in the next video. Bye bye. Let me turn off my phone. We don't want any bitches calling in the middle of the video, you know. Can you put that on the internet? I guess you can.